Welcome to another exciting episode of bringing Jesus back into focus. He's been taken out of focus because they've overlaid the Old Testament Jewish religion and their two-headed God Yahweh on top of him and the loving spiritual life force and creator of a heavenly spiritual world in another universe, even if you want to look at it that way, another dimension, that's spiritual. No flesh and blood bone bodies anymore. You can't get hurt anymore. But it's a world of love, perfect love. Jesus said this divine being, consciousness, that's created this world is only love. That's the spiritual world, not this world. And therefore, to enter that world, you have to become only love. So as a Jewish Christian Catholic, I was born into that faith. And while I was glad to receive the teachings of Jesus through that church, by the time I reached the age of reason at 16 or 17, I realised they were trying to put it over me that the Jewish God Yahweh is the same divine source of love that Jesus was the one with, which of course is a lie. So I left, but I took Jesus with me. I always loved his words, and that's really all I was interested in the whole Bible, were just his parables, beautiful parables, words, sayings, his whole life. To me, that's it. There it is. That's the only thing. I left him, and then I studied Buddha, of course, because Buddha's teachings, he's a pacifist like Jesus originally was. So I ended up these last few years with an illness, a fungal illness in the lung and body, and so I thought I'd better contribute something before I go. So I visited a whole lot of churches here in Australia and Melbourne, and I realised, blimey, they're synagogues. they're all Jewish. They're not teaching the proper way of Jesus. So I had to redo the Gospels first of all. That's the starting point, of course, to get his words clearer. So that book's been published. That's available around the world, the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged. The cover looks a little bit different at the moment. That's out there in the world, but it's the same book, and almost. And that's about, instead of using terms like God the Father, I use the term loving spiritual creator. And I've removed a lot of the Jewish overlays and redundancies, a lot of the apocalyptic jargon, and I've just tried to leave the essence of his teachings of how to become at one with love and non-violence, care for others, love others, etc., and that the loving spiritual creator is only love. So I've made sure his message is truthfully represented in those Gospels, unlike it is at the moment in most translations. And this book's about to be published in this first sort of week or two of 2026. It's completed. I had to rush it a bit because of my illness, because I nearly die every day, so to the flesh, that is. And the flesh nearly dies every day, as I explain in the book here about the two bodies Jesus taught. But that is now completed. There's enough good points in it to help children who are confused about this dialogue of the Judeo-Christian churches, two different religions, two different gods. And a lot of children have left because of the Jewish religion. I don't blame them. I'm not a Jew, Why do I want to bother with their religion? There's some love in it, but there's a war god too. So there's two different gods. So those books are available, and you can get them, soon you'll be able to get them both on the internet somewhere. But this will be chapter 12 today. I'll be reading from the Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, which is about to be published. This is the general summary on the back of the book. The spiritual teachings of Jesus are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind, filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator. Then our two bodies, one made of the earth, one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only true spiritual children of light and love can enter the heavenly spiritual world. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. I have a daily prayer that I say to help me center in my spiritual body, particularly because one blessing I have is that I nearly die every single day from the neurotoxic effects of the fungal poisoning. So I'm well aware that death is right. I'm at the crossroads. I may be healed too any moment from heaven, but I could also go any moment. So I am using this prayer. I'll just get that looking a little bit better there. That's fine. Good. So this is the prayer that I tend to like to say because it sums up Jesus' teachings and all of us. We should be in our spiritual body. You can't hurt anyone if you're in a spiritual body. It's impossible because it's only empowered by a loving spiritual life force. Our bodies are flesh, as I explain in the book, and everyone should know. You need potatoes, pumpkins, beans, and other things, water and gases, for that to work. But you only need your loving spiritual life force of the loving Creator in your spiritual identity to have spiritual life. You don't need anything else. There's no physical bodies in heaven. Jesus said that. Now I use the female aspect. I call God she, or this divine loving spiritual being she. Women give birth to our physical bodies on earth. As we know, most women don't start wars. It's mostly the rock ape males who do that. They're behaving like the Yahweh war god, genocidal war god at Jericho, where the war god Yahweh tells them to go and slaughter everyone and steal everything and steal their land. And the Jews go and do it, of course, because that's Yahweh, the war god, as opposed to the other Yahweh that says, love your neighbour as yourself. Two different gods. So I use the word she. Interesting thing about the word she as opposed to he is that the word she contains both the male and the female pronoun in one word. He's only male. So she, and this divine spiritual being is beyond gender, and Jesus even said we'll have bodies like angels. There's no longer marriage and biological reproduction going on. That's all finished. So we have angelic spiritual bodies. This spiritual being in this world spiritual. So all this biological stuff here that's finished. Once your horse dies or your body, this is the prayer. And I say it and think about my spiritual body. So if you're thinking now that you've got two bodies, that's the first thing you have to understand. Or Buddha would say you've got a consciousness, a mind that travels on, and a body of flesh that dies. Jesus says you've got a spiritual body and soul that travels on with a spiritual mind, and your body dies. They both taught the same type of thing. So if you think about your spiritual body and you just want to be in that now while you're here on earth, this prayer can help you center into it. As I rest upon this earth, the Holy One, she will give birth to who I really am, awakening me from clay and sand, a spiritual child of the divine, with only her love that fills my mind. To every creature I will be kind in every single land. For this is truly who I am, a spiritual child of the loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world, born out of the earth to bring her love to children in need and help guide them home to heaven, as she has guided me, through the spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave us to be just as he, a spiritual child of love on earth. If you become a spiritual child, you won't be able to hurt anyone, certainly not deliberately. So we'll go into the book now. This is chapter 12, Identity of Light or Identity of Shadow. The last chapter was about the basic two identities of the body of flesh that dies and returns to the earth and it's only food for the vultures, which is exactly what Jesus said. And the other body leaves and is taken to be near to, and the words were taken out of the Gospels, they took them out, but taken to be near to our loving spiritual Creator. So there's the two sort of different bodies that are made of different substances or different life forces. One's the spiritual life force of love. The other one's a dualistic, biological body with life forces of chemicals and gases and physical potato, beans, pumpkins, interreactions, different organs, and they all fall apart. So this is the identity of light or identity of shadow. Now this is the choice of the sort of personality, you might say, that you're going to live out of. Everyone has a physical body with a certain DNA structure. Some are extroverted, some are introverted, some are different gifts, different ways of speaking or different ways of bringing love into the world. That's all DNA and biological, that's fine. But it's when children choose to become a dark shadow entity, a satanic entity, that's a big problem. That's all the warmongers in the world who are there right now, 2026, the beginning of 26, we've got these incredible satanic dark shadow figures. They've moved out of their true identity of spirit and light. They've created a false identity to surround their spiritual body, and then they murder and kill and start war, and they're just evil. The evil that they are is the shadow identity. Their spiritual body inside is going dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, because the life force of the beautiful, loving, spiritual Creator in heaven is leaking out of them as they murder and kill more and more thousands of children. So they're almost dead to the spirit, you might say. But that's another chapter. This is identity of light or identity of shadow. We have to choose which one to be. And it's best to be the identity of light, because then everything you do, all your actions, your body of flesh, will express this loving life force in your spiritual body. If you become a false identity like Putin, Netanyahu, Hamas, all the murderers in the world, the killers, satanic children, Satan's armies, murdering and killing with their guns and bombs and drones, they've created false lies to live out of. They're not even their true self. They're living a lie. That's quite literally what they're doing. When they die, of course, they'll reap what they sow. We can't help them. They'll be in a really burning realization of hell regarding what they've done. But all we can do is warn them. But you know how it is. They don't believe in life after death anyway. They are death. Identity of light or identity of shadow. In the last chapter, we saw how we all have two fundamentally different types of bodies with us here on earth. One spiritual and one flesh. Our spiritual identity is only love and is singular, as Jesus said, when he referred to our I or mind must be single or whole to be filled with light. Our body of flesh is dualistic by its very nature, and its identity can shift due simply to chemical changes in the organ called the brain. These shifting identities are not through free will, but are forced on us by the chemicals in the brain. They do not represent a spiritual wrongdoing and are not subject to reaping what we sow. We now have to look at the identities that are free will identities of choice when our biological body of flesh is healthy and in perfect chemical balance. This is the separation between the sheep of peace and love and the goats of war and evil that Jesus spoke about. It is this personal battle that has to be won against all odds and temptations to become a true spiritual child filled with the light and love of our loving spiritual Creator to enter the heavenly spiritual world after death. And what other way is there to transform this earthly world into a peaceful, loving world except by each one of us becoming peaceful and loving, as Jesus taught and Buddha taught. Identity of light. So this is the true identity you want to aim for and get into now before your body of flesh dies. John 12:35, Jesus said, "The spiritual light is with you a little while longer. Make progress now while you have the light, otherwise darkness may overtake you. He who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, so you may become children of the light." John 8:12, "I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of spiritual life." John 12:45, "He who sees me sees the one who sent me. I have come as a light into the material world so that everyone who believes in my way will not remain in darkness." John 11:9, "If anyone walks in the daytime, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the darkness of the night, he will stumble, for the light is no longer shining upon him." Matthew 6:22, "The light of the body is the eye of the mind. Therefore, when your vision is only of love, your whole being is full of light and love. But when the vision you have is evil, your whole being is full of darkness. Be warned, therefore, that the light you should have in you is not really darkness." Thomas Gospel, his disciple said, "Show us the place where you are, for we must seek it." He said to them, "Whoever has ears ought to listen. There is light within an enlightened person, and it shines on the whole world. If the light does not shine, it is dark." The light of love versus the darkness of no love. The Thomas Gospel, Jesus said, "One who is whole will be filled with light, but one who is fragmented will be filled with darkness." If they ask you, "Where have you come from?" say, "We have come from the light, from the place where the light came into being from her own self." If they ask you, "Are you her?" say, "We are her children, the chosen of the living one. Images of men are visible to men, but the light and spirit which is in them is hidden in the image of the light of the Creator." The spiritual identity within, hidden in her light, will be revealed and come forth. Best to do it now. These important teachings of Jesus direct us to become spiritual children of light and love in this dualistic material world of good and evil as soon as we can, while we still have the opportunity to do so. As long as our body of flesh is still alive and healthy, we can choose to awaken into our true, ultimate spiritual identity through free will. Jesus was a fully awakened spiritual child of light and love, and at one with the spiritual loving life force of our loving spiritual Creator that was empowering his spiritual body, mind, and soul. His instructions and spiritual teachings, along with his own life example, enable us all to follow him and undergo the same transformational experience of spiritual awakening as he did. As he said, we must be born again into our new primary identity of our spiritual body and soul mind of love and light, leaving our body of flesh with its dualistic mind to be our secondary identity to bring heaven's love to earth. We still need the body of flesh, but only to manifest this heavenly love that empowers our spiritual life while we remain on earth to help bring love and peace to this world and all the children born here. Our caterpillar flesh identity transforms into a spiritual butterfly identity, but it still has its caterpillar body for a while to put to good use before it flies away to be in the heavenly spiritual world. Jesus knew he had a living butterfly spiritual body that would not die on the cross. He knew he could leave his caterpillar body behind to return to the earth it was formed from. His spiritual identity became his primary identity, and his caterpillar body of flesh was a secondary identity that he used to teach and manifest heavenly love to other children in this material world to awaken them and lead them to heaven. Empowered only by this loving spiritual life force, he could never harm anyone in any way. He could only heal them, restore them, and bring them out of suffering and darkness by bringing those dead to the Spirit back to true eternal life as children of our loving spiritual Creator. Once we become as He, we also become living spiritual children in an often violent material world and shine the loving presence of the heavenly world and our loving Creator to everyone we meet, even our earthly enemies. How else can we help them find the way if we do not display it to them? If we merely succumb to be like them, we will only be a mirror image of who they already are. Souls lost in the darkness, beasts of the flesh, devoid of spiritual life, light, and true eternal life. And love. Our spiritual identity of light has 5 main characteristics. The first is love. For all good things and all other spiritual characteristics come forth from and are born out of love. The second is compassion, for this is the way we connect to all children of our loving Creator who are in need. Compassion is the power of the loving spiritual life force that sustains our spiritual bodies and souls flowing out of us to others, manifesting whatever they may need. The third is forgiveness, for it is a very high level of expressing pure spiritual love and is vital for peace. The fourth is non-violence, for there is no violence in the heavenly spiritual world or children of love of our loving Creator, and the only counterforce to violence is non-violence. The fifth is equanimity, for all human children on earth are equally loved by our loving spiritual Creator, so we must love all children equally too. Love. Love is at the heart of our soul and spiritual identity of light. It is eternal and pure gold and cannot be contaminated in any way as it comes forth from the source of pure love herself. We see everyone and everything through our soul mind of love and interact with them through our soul mind of love. Love is the guiding force within us that helps us understand how to handle any situation as a spiritual child of our Creator. If the situation involves violence, war, or other such evils, we engage with it through love. If we come across a situation where a child is attacking someone, we may use physical restraint to stop them out of love for the victim and also the child caught in darkness, so they do not damage their spiritual life any further. But we do not kill the child causing the evil. When warmongers and their armies of brain-dead sheep start murdering other children, we stand openly against them and the armaments industry of Satan in any way we can, and give them no support whatsoever. We certainly never join in their filthy, satanic, beast of the flesh evil. Jesus said, "Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you." If the situation involves poverty, we share whatever we can to help give them a better life and reduce their suffering out of love for them. Greed damages our spiritual life and soul. If we see other children suffering in physical pain, we do whatever we can to help comfort them and alleviate their suffering out of love for them. Love guides us with wisdom from heaven to help us understand what is best to do in each situation we may encounter where love is needed. And whenever we share our love with others in need, the eternal wellspring of heavenly love within us fills us up again, and we never run out. Jesus said we can only do what our Creator would do, and she is only love. This is the rock that we stand on to help lift children out of the quicksand and cesspools of suffering, poverty, and evil they may have fallen into. Love is our true eternal spiritual life force, and it is very powerful because it is pure and comes forth from the heavenly spiritual world of love. Love is vital for peace on earth. Any child on earth who lives only out of love and the following four powers, regardless of religion or no religion, will enter the heavenly spiritual world of love. For these are the empowering life forces that constitute our new covenant identity, as Jesus put it, of our eternal spiritual bodies and souls. Compassion. We can see the compassionate example and practice of Jesus through his interactions with other children in need. The same compassion we must all have to become like him and follow the spiritual way of love to heaven. In Matthew 15:32, Jesus said, "I feel compassion for the people because they have remained with me for 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I do not want to send them away hungry, for they may faint on their way home." Jesus manifested the miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes to feed the hungry children who had come to listen to him teach, for he was concerned about their physical well-being. How many homeless children do we see but never bother to offer them something to eat or drink? Followers of Jesus do offer out of compassion and love for them. Matthew 20:30-34, while Jesus was travelling along a road, 2 blind men sitting by the roadside called out to him to have mercy on them. Jesus stopped and asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said, "Lord, we want our eyes to be opened." Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes and they regained their sight. Mark 1:40, a leper came to Jesus and fell down on his knees imploring him, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Moved with compassion, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, "I am willing, be cleansed." If we have a family member or close friend in need of medical support and care, we should oblige in any way we can. If no one close to us is in need of such help, we can support a charitable organisation in need of money to carry on humanitarian medical works to help those in need. Luke 7:11. Jesus came to a city called Nain, and as he neared the gate, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of a widow. When he saw this, he had compassion for her and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came and touched the stretcher, and those carrying it stood still, and he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the young man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. We may not be able to bring the dead body of flesh back to life, but through compassion we can support those who have lost loved ones, especially those who are left in a vulnerable position, as this widow would have been. See, Jesus is feeling their suffering. I'm finding in Australia, in our community now, it's really gone cold. Luke 10:25, the parable of the Good Samaritan is all about compassion, love, and equanimity. The man beaten and robbed by thieves and left to die was passed by twice by 2 Jewish men who had no compassion for him. But Jesus then says, "But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came upon the dying man, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and placed him on his donkey, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him, and left money with the innkeeper to also care for him." Jesus teaches about having compassion for all children, including strangers in this parable who are in need of help. If we see someone injure themselves near us, we must go over and assist them as spiritual children of our loving Creator and followers of Jesus. Compassion keeps our hearts and souls warm, and we have to thank those in need for providing the opportunity to be compassionate. You see, those in need are the ones who help you stay spiritually alive with love and compassion. Luke 15:11. In the parable of the prodigal son, we see Jesus tell us that our loving spiritual Creator is compassionate towards us, especially when we do wrong and return to be good. The son arose and went to his father to ask forgiveness for his wrongdoings. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell upon his neck and kissed him and welcomed him back with a great feast and celebration. A loving spiritual Creator is love, compassion, forgiveness, non-violence, and equanimity. We as her children and followers of Jesus must be the same to enter heaven. Forgiveness. I'll discuss forgiveness more fully in another chapter. In general, forgiveness is our spiritual shield, protecting us from harming ourselves and others by falling out of our spiritual loving life force and hating other children who hurt us, wanting to retaliate in kind. It is like having the living water that Jesus spoke of, preventing any fire of anger to take hold of you and burn your spiritual home to the ground. Forgiveness is compassion. Forgiveness is a generous gift of love we offer to others who hurt us in the hope they will change their ways of hurting and find spiritual love through our kindness towards them. Only a child who is separated from their true spiritual identity and the loving life force of our loving Creator, and therefore the heavenly spiritual world, could deliberately hurt us. The warmongers. So we must feel sorry for them, for they are living in darkness and do not even know who they really are, and by doing evil they are cutting themselves off from the heavenly spiritual world. This can lead them into a hellish experience after their body of flesh dies. If we are to be children of light, we must never condemn children who have fallen into darkness, but try our best to save them, bring them out of their darkness, and love them to the heavenly spiritual world beyond all suffering. That doesn't mean we don't condemn their evil. We have to do that, otherwise they'd never know they're doing evil. If we do not forgive others who hurt us and we withhold our spiritual love from them, our loving Creator cannot allow her spiritual love to flow into us. The loving spiritual life force must always be flowing into and through us freely to others for us to have true spiritual life. And forgiving others prevents that flow from being blocked by our own refusal to forgive and love those who hurt us. The Buddhists teach that the enemy is the jewel in our life because they help reveal to us the true depth of inner strength of our spiritual life force of love. Shallow love will fail under the assault, but deep spiritual love for all will never fail. Forgiveness is vital for peace on earth and peace of mind, your own mind. Non-violence. Non-violence is the total commitment to being a spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world above and beyond the death of the body of flesh. For the first 312 years after Jesus established this spiritual way of love to heaven, all followers of his were pacifists. They were murdered, raped and thrown to the lions, but never retaliated in kind to become beasts of the flesh like those who were persecuting them. As Jesus taught, do not fear those who can kill your body of flesh, but only fear sin, for that will damage your spiritual body and soul mind of love and prevent you from entering heaven. For they knew all flesh dies, rots and stinks, and is nothing more than food for vultures, as Jesus taught. And only those who live out of their spiritual identity and soul mind of love will enter the heavenly spiritual world after passing through their death experience. They were committing no evil, and they did not kill their persecutors to protect their bodies of flesh, so they were ultimately safe. They were true followers of Jesus who believed in spiritual life after the death of their body of flesh and the existence of the eternal heavenly spiritual world for all spiritual children of our loving Creator to enter. This powerful spiritual instruction that Jesus gave of being non-violent towards others saved them all to heaven in the face of horrific persecution and violence, impacting their temporary physical life and body of flesh. But those who had become beasts of the flesh, devoid of spiritual life, who murdered them, raped and reaped the suffering that they themselves had caused after their bodies of flesh died, unable to enter the heavenly spiritual world. We reap as we sow. Jesus and Buddha both warned us. Constantine and corrupt early Christian leaders destroyed this very high level of spiritual practice that Jesus instigated for us all to follow in this material earthly world. Our spiritual identity should be even be willing to let go of our body of flesh in the face of violence without retaliating in kind to demonstrate this truth to other children lost in darkness. Violent children need non-violent children to be able to see other possibilities and a better way of love for themselves. Just like Jesus, we all have another body of spirit that we know will rise from our dead body of flesh, reaping as it has sown. We must keep it alive in love. So we remain standing in the spiritual truth even in the face of death on the spiritual rock that Jesus himself established by giving us his spiritual teachings that awaken our eternal spiritual body and soul of love that brings us safely home to the heavenly spiritual world. Non-violence is one of the highest demonstrations of our belief in spiritual life after the death of our body of temporary flesh. Jesus on the cross of violence shows us the spiritual way of non-violence, forgiveness and love that will lead us all to the heavenly spiritual world if we just follow his way. A commitment to non-violence by all of us now is vital for peace on earth and essential for children in the future. Our spiritual identity is the ultimate true life we can have. Our spiritual identity can only support life. Our spiritual identity cannot take the life of another. Our spiritual identity is loving. Our spiritual identity is caring and kind. Our spiritual identity is generous towards others. Our spiritual identity is understanding and patient. Our spiritual identity is compassionate. Our spiritual identity helps to heal all wounds and sufferings, but never causes them. Our spiritual identity always forgives others. Our spiritual identity is not attached to earthly material things, but only the loving spiritual way of the heavenly spiritual world. Our spiritual identity stands strong and fearless in the face of all evil, yet challenges all violence with non-violence, understanding, wisdom, and love. And you might add to that truth. Our spiritual identity and body of light and love will always be filled with the loving life force of our loving spiritual Creator, as long as we are always facing her in spirit and in truth, as Jesus said to do. If we do not cover our spiritual body and soul in filth or evil that block us from receiving her light and love, or turn our back to her that creates a false shadow identity, her loving light will always be able to reach and warm our hearts and souls. And we will always be connected through her love and joy in our true spiritual identity and enter the eternal heavenly spiritual world and life beyond all suffering after we pass through our final death experience. All we do will be done out of her love that she freely gives to us to share with others as her spiritual children, and we ask for nothing in return to do so. For our joy is to be her spiritual children filled with her loving life force, which wells up inside our soul and spirit like a never-ending wellspring, leading to eternal life. When we are fully centered and come alive to our spiritual body and soul mind of love, we can never hurt anyone. And once we have uncovered this buried spiritual treasure within the field of our body of flesh, we will never want to be apart from it or lose it, and will live out of it forever. Pardon me. Her light and loving spiritual life force is indeed like the sun shining forever upon us to give us true eternal spiritual life in the heavenly spiritual world of love. All we have to do is accept it and be at one with it. Equanimity. The following chapter will discuss equanimity, but we can clearly see that Jesus loved all children equally, whether young or old, rich or poor, sick or well, friend or stranger. It was irrelevant to Jesus who the child was or what condition they were in, either spiritually or physically. He simply addressed their personal need to help them come out of their spiritual or physical suffering. As his spiritual followers and children of our loving spiritual Creator, in the heavenly spiritual world we must do the same and see all children as our loving Creator's children, regardless of their present condition or situation. Identity of shadow. Here we've got the warmongers and other such gangsters. The only way to see your shadow is to turn away from the sun and turn your back to the light. And right there before you, spread on the earth, will be a silhouette shadow figure of your living body of flesh. The shadow figure is in the shape of your body but has no life in it. Only your body of flesh has life in it. Yet when you raise an arm, the shadow figure raises its arm. If you hold a gun, the shadow figure holds a gun too. If you form a fist to hit someone, the shadow figure does too. The shadow figure is animated by your will, but there is no light or spiritual life in it. It is a figure filled only with darkness, yet will do anything you wish it to do. All evil comes forth from the dark shadow identities children create from their own deluded imaginations to live out of a lie. Putin, Hitler, Netanyahu, Hamas, you name it. When we are facing our loving spiritual Creator, we have nothing to hide, for we are fully exposed to her light and love shining on us continuously, and there can be no shadow figure between us. We can think of her warm love holding on to us as her willing child of love, which is how our relationship with her should always be. But whenever we do anything wrong against her spirit of love and goodness, we always have to turn away from her sight and light to do so. For our conscience alerts us when we are moving out of her loving life force into something darker, and we do not want her to see it. A useless endeavour, as she is always aware of everything we do, because she loves us. A loving creator spiritual life force can never be involved in empowering anything evil, such as lying, killing, war, or theft. So if we wish to go against her and our true spiritual identity of love, we must step out of our spiritual body and soul mind of love and use another life force to do it, and another false identity. These are made up of the earthly life force of the body of the flesh and a shadow identity with no spiritual loving life force in it that we create ourselves from the thoughts of our own imagination and is usually called ego. It is a shadow figure, literally a figment of our imagination and devoid of all true spiritual life force, that is capable of causing great suffering or hardship in this material world by using the body and brain mind of the flesh. Adolf Hitler was a false shadow figure of darkness, as are all the current warmongers in the world today in 2025. They are all children of Satan, born out of their own dark thoughts, worshippers of death, beasts of the flesh, not spiritual children of our loving spiritual creator, who are worshippers of life. We create the dark, false shadow identity to serve and obtain our selfish desires that are born out of the dualistic mind with the body of flesh, while ignoring our spiritual body and soul mind of selfless love. The more we live out of our false shadow identity of darkness, the stronger it becomes, and the weaker our true spiritual identity becomes, and her light within us begins to dim. This egotistical, self-serving shadow identity, based solely on the body of flesh and its dualistic, changeable mind, is shaped by us to suit our selfish goals and utilizes our body of flesh and its talents and abilities to achieve them. We create this monster layer by layer, thought by thought, action by action, word by word, until it takes over and controls our earthly life, destroying our spiritual life of love and truth. You got to feel sorry for these children. They got no idea what's going to happen to them after they die. Very sorry for them. It is a calculating and manipulating perversion of who we should really be, and all those who bring this dark shadow identity to life are living a lie unto themselves. This is the false satanic identity, the dark force that rises against love to destroy the child's own spiritual life and bring suffering to other children. This false shadow identity destroys that child's chance of entering the heavenly spiritual world of eternal love and propels them into a place of burning realizations after the body of temporary flesh dies. This is the real enemy we all need to defeat. This is the evil one in the Lord's Prayer that we pray to be delivered from, and all the temptations that can lead us into becoming false shadow identities of darkness. Jesus was threatened by these same temptations, but overcame them by becoming a fully awakened spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator, filled only with her loving life force. He was born again into his spiritual identity of love and light, and he had to seek and fight to become at one with it, as we all do. And he helps us to achieve this through following his words and example. As he said, "My words, they are spirit and they are life. You will have troubles in this earthly world, but I have overcome this material world, and so can you." Those words have been cut out, by the way. They don't want you to be as powerful as Jesus in love. Our dark shadow, false identity, devoid of loving spiritual life force, has three main characteristics. Firstly, it is totally based only on the body of the flesh, worshipping only material things. Secondly, it is selfish, narcissistic, manipulating, self-serving, and does not care about any other children, and loves to dominate everyone and punish anyone who disobeys them. Thirdly, its mind, darkened by evil intent, has no real belief in anything spiritual or a loving spiritual creator who gives them a spiritual life to come to the heavenly spiritual world in after death. So they really are in serious trouble. Many children have no belief in spiritual life, but live a life full of love, non-violence and forgiveness, and are children of our loving spiritual Creator without even knowing it. As Jesus said, you will know the children of our loving spiritual Creator by their fruits, and so will she. I often say to these children who have lived a life of love but do not believe in life after the death of the body of flesh, I hope you get a lovely surprise when you die, which I'm sure they will, for no matter what religion or secular way of life they have lived it all out of love. The spiritual way to heaven is only through the power of love. Judge not, you'll not be judged. Condemn not, you'll not be condemned. Our body of flesh can provide us with high levels of chemical pleasure and satisfaction based on what we do with our body and what we put into our body of flesh for it to be healthy. Natural, healthy and harmless physical pleasures are a part of our earthly existence with a body of flesh. These are often enjoyed and in the company of other children can provide us with many happy memories during our life on earth. While all the biological chemical pleasures and experiences our body of flesh creates are temporary, the clear light mind experience of spiritual love is eternal. However, physical pleasures can be a way for us to express and share the spiritual loving life force in our spiritual body and soul identity with other children. But the false shadow identity of darkness uses the body of flesh for very different purposes. Wide is the way to destruction. Matthew 7:13. Jesus said, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter in that way. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to true life, and there are few who find it. The combinations of false shadow identities that children can create come forth from a very wide selection of characteristics that all destroy spiritual light and love. And many have gone this way and fallen into this trap to varying degrees. From the greedy and petty shoplifters and con artists to brutal warmongers who slaughter thousands of innocent children of our loving Creator. They are all living a lie out of a false identity, and the more they commit these acts, the more they become like beasts of the flesh devoid of spiritual life force. All flesh dies, rots and stinks. Only our spiritual life lives on. The false identity can only come into existence if we step out of our spiritual identity of love and perform actions that go against love. Love is the narrow way and small gate that leads to our spiritual life in heaven. The spiritual way is a path of light made up of the words of Jesus that are like beautiful cobblestones beneath our feet. Our spiritual identity is safe if we stay on this path. The false shadow identity can only be empowered if we leave this path of light and are enticed to follow darker paths that branch off and lead away from the path of light and heaven. One such path of darkness is to use our body of flesh to indulge in sensual pleasures and gratification just to receive the chemical intoxication caused by the physical indulgence. Taking alcohol or drugs to get a heightened chemical spike of experience in our brain is a very common abuse of our body of flesh. It is dangerous, addictive, and can seriously imbalance the chemistry of our brains and minds. Alcohol and drug indulgence can lead us into violent behaviour, turning to crime and general ill health, and in too many cases, the death of our body of flesh. To harm our own bodies of flesh in this way, that contain the spiritual treasure of eternal life within them, is a dark shadow identity action, devoid of all spiritual life. Another destructive dark path to go down is the selfish act of greed by worshipping money over love for others and the source of our spiritual life. Children can amass millions and billions of dollars and buy any little physical indulgence they want, yet walk right past homeless children of our loving Creator living on the street and give them nothing. No love flows out of these dark shadow figures to others in need, so no love from heaven above can flow into them. Covered in the darkness of their own false shadow identity of greed and selfishness, their spiritual lamps of inner light and love have dimmed. As Jesus said, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his spirit and soul? You cannot serve Mammon and our loving spiritual Creator, and a man cannot ride two horses at once. Another branch of the destructive path of greed the shadow identity indulges in is gambling. Many lives have been ruined in this pursuit, and many crimes committed in order to feed and satisfy these needs of the false shadow identity of darkness we create. Needs that enslave our spirit and can never free us to find contentment and peace by just living a simple life of love and joy with other children. Once we start chasing after material things and money, putting them above spiritual love, we will never be satisfied no matter how much we own, and we will always want more. Love is self-fulfilling by its very nature, for it is the true source of joy in our spiritual life and who we really are. All other forms of general self-indulgent addiction that prevent, interfere with, or destroy our spiritual life all come forth from these egotistical, false shadow identities of darkness we create from our own imagination. They are based on and empowered only by our body of flesh. These dark shadow identities can be found just about anywhere and anyone with varying degrees of darkness. In family homes, businesses, organisations, schools, hospitals, governments, any workplace, and even churches. When they are just destroying their own spiritual life, the false shadow identity of darkness is contained. But in extreme examples, they can rise to dark power in gangs, governing bodies, governments, and dictators. And these false shadow identities of darkness can create extreme suffering and death to come upon other children. These are the ones who worship the satanic identity they themselves have become and are the children of Satan on earth, the thieving god of murder, war, and death. They have set themselves up as a brutal war god to be obeyed and worshipped, or they will punish and kill you. They turn their back on the beautiful, loving, spiritual Creator who is the source of their spiritual life and cover themselves in filth. Ignorant, blind, deaf, and empty, they hurtle themselves towards hell. These false shadow identities care about no one but themselves and love to dominate other children. These children of darkness are extremely dangerous to us all as they deliberately cultivate evil and poison the minds of other children to join in to do their bidding. All wars are started by these children, living out of their false shadow identity of darkness. They couldn't care less how many children they murder, rape, torture, or enslave. They are devoid of spiritual life and love. Their shadow figure is addicted to dominating, hurting, and murdering other children. Vampire figures feeding on bloodlust. They are lost in the dark shadow of the beast of the flesh they have created and become. As Jesus said, "He who walks in darkness does not know where he is going." If they knew where their evil actions were taking them after death, they would stop their evil ways immediately, get down on their knees and ask for forgiveness. But they do not believe in life after death or reaping what we sow. They have no belief in heaven and no idea about how to reach heaven, as they have no belief in the spiritual way of love that leads to heaven. And they do not believe in a spiritual loving creator of life. How much more lost can anyone be? All because they rejected their eternal spiritual identity of love by turning their back on our loving creator and stepped into their own pathetic creation of a short-term lifeless shadow identity of darkness and death to become beasts of the flesh. Intoxicated by their own evil, they are blind to the truth of what they have become. As spiritual children of our loving spiritual creator in heaven, we are the light, they are a shadow. We are the truth, they are a lie. We are eternal, they are all temporary. The darkness can only exist in us while the spiritual awakening of the way of light and love that Jesus taught has not yet arisen for us to become at one with. All darkness and false shadow identities vanish out of existence once this takes place, and we are born again from above into our eternal spiritual life. May we all help each other to become enlightened and wake up to who we really are as spiritual children of our loving Creator in the heavenly spiritual world, and expose and help eliminate all evil and false shadow identities that many children have become trapped in, to set them free and stop the suffering they cause to other children. Our time on earth is short, and if we fill it with spiritual love and understanding, making this world a better place for all, then we have achieved the greatest thing possible in a body of flesh by bringing the heavenly spiritual way of love to earth for all children to find and follow home to heaven. To awaken into being spiritual is the true resurrection then we can rise from the dead body of flesh and enter the heavenly spiritual world of love when our earthly journey comes to an end. John 3:20, for everyone who does evil hates the light and does not come to the light for fear that their wrongdoings will be exposed. But the one who practices the truth comes to the light, so that their deeds may be manifested through the loving life force of their loving spiritual creator in them. Beautiful. God is love. Love is life. Light is love. Darkness is evil. Where the light is, no darkness can exist. Well, I hope you enjoyed that chapter about the two identities of shadow and light. I'm a lay person, so I'm not a university theological cardinal, bishop, pope or anything like that. But I've always known Jesus as love and non-violence right in the middle of my heart and soul. So I haven't got a problem talking about the evil, whether it's the Jewish religion, two gods, or children being evil, or whatever it is. And I'm also a universal understanding. I have a universal understanding of what Jesus said, that everyone has a spiritual body. Everyone. It's the same spiritual body, not just followers of Jesus. They're not the only ones who have a spiritual body, and Hindus don't, and Muslims don't, and Jews don't, and atheists don't, and Sikhs don't, and Baha'i don't. No, every single human child has a spiritual body, but it's only empowered by a loving spiritual life force which has certain characteristics. And you need those characteristics to have the new covenant, is the way Jesus put it. The correct Greek translation is new disposition, new character. That's what it really means. Your new character, as Jesus demonstrated, was his spiritual body that left his dead body of flesh and appeared to the disciples briefly, then went to heaven. He's not coming back. He said, follow me to where I'm going. Here's the Melways, here's the roadmap, here's the path that leads to heaven. I'm going there, follow me. Just follow my words. He said it 17 times. My words will save you. They'll transform you. So I share that with you because I love his words. And I'm lucky because I'm blessed, because even though I was born into the Jewish Christian Catholic Church, I left at 16 because they were teaching the Jewish religion. And Yahweh, the two-headed God Yahweh, is the same divine source of love that Jesus was at one with. And this heavenly world of love and this being of love, whose sun rises on the good and the evil, whose rain falls on the just and the unjust. Unless your love is as perfect as this, you're not going to heaven. They're his words. He's a pacifist. Wake up. I wish the Jewish Christian churches would cut ties with the Jewish religion. You've got to do it now. What the Jews are doing in Gaza and the West Bank is disgraceful. And in the front of the entire world, and not one democracy in the world, mostly Judeo-Christian democracies, don't lift a finger against them because they're being poisoned by the Jewish religion, which has mixed the early church leaders mixed it in with the new wine of Jesus. And they actually believe the God Yahweh is just one God, which is a lie. And that's why I'm doing this, to free Christian children up from the Jewish religion, really. You'll find love in Buddhist teaching, in the Quran, in Baha'i, in Hindu tradition. Love's all over the place. Jesus had, I think, a really beautiful balance, and it was love in action. But he and Buddha are my two main spiritual teachers because they were both pacifists and had perfect equanimity. That's the only way. You're going to wake up to who you really are. Anyway, by all means, contact me at jcinfocus@gmail.com. Where are we? Let me see now. There we go, jcinfocus@gmail.com. If you find what I'm saying interesting or you're completely against what I'm saying, email me. Happy to discuss it. But I don't think I'm wrong. My mother, Lorraine, she had what I call intelligent faith. She was just one of the most beautiful practitioner of the way of Jesus I've ever met in the world. And I got the privilege of caring for her. I stopped work to care for her full time as a carer at the end of her life. And we enjoyed many discussions about this and about Buddhist teachings as well, which she also really enjoyed. But she had intelligent faith. She wasn't interested in the Book of Revelation or the Jewish Old Testament religion. She had no interest in that. Just the words of Jesus about love and selflessness. And she was the most selfless human being I've ever known. I'd be lucky to make up her little finger in selflessness. But I tried. The only thing I can say to you is love your way to heaven. And I'll try to do the same. and we'll make the world a better place. And we've got to, don't support any armies in the world. Don't support any army, navy, air force, anywhere. If your children are in them, tell them to get out. If you're in the army, air force, navy, get out. Drop the gun. You're holding on to your own death. Okay. Hang on to life instead, Cradle a baby or go and give some food to a poor person. That's life, giving life. Don't give death. You'll become death. Okay. Bye for now.